Today, we have excellent information that has been prepared by our students to help us do just that and to move ahead in our ministry. Including would be our treasures from God's Word, which will focus on the nation of Israel and how their decisive acts of faith had Jehovah's blessing. We'll also be discussing briefly how our use of our research tools can bring us more joy in our ministry. Our local needs will be highlighting the upcoming Ramapo construction project and how all of us can have a share in some way. And then our congregation Bible study will be considering Ezekiel's example, his temple vision, in greater detail in how it provided the Jews, as well as ourselves, with important lessons about how we should worship Jehovah. So there are many things to look forward to in our meeting today. So let's get started. And to begin with, from our treasures from God's Word, Brother Nathan Nunez has our opening part, Jehovah Blesses Acts of Faith. Brother Nunez.
Can you imagine the scene? As you can see on the image on the screen, here come the priests carrying the Ark of Jehovah, and now they're facing the Jordan River. The river is flooded and overflowed. The priests in the image have a notably nervous look on their faces. Why is that? Well, have you ever been by a raging river? Maybe on a hiking trail or on a camping trip? If so, can you put yourselves in the place of these priests? Imagine the powerful sound that raging torrent would have made as it rushed past the river banks. How will they ever possibly cross the river, and all the while carrying the sacred Ark of Jehovah upon their shoulders? Well, let's read together the direction that Jehovah gave them in Joshua chapter 3, verses 12 and 13. Joshua chapter 3, verses 12 and 13. It says, "Now take 12 men from the tribes of Israel, 1 man from each tribe. And as soon as the soles of the feet of the priests carrying the Ark of Jehovah, the Lord of the whole earth, touch the waters of the Jordan flowing from upstream will be halted, as they will stand still like a dam." Yes, Jehovah promised them that as soon as the soles of the priest's feet touched the waters of the Jordan, those waters would be halted as if there was a dam in place. Now take into account that during this time, the spring rains had flooded this water and it had overflowed. And sadly, in modern days, some bathers have even lost their lives because of how strong the current is in this river. So imagine the faith that required. Here they are, carrying the Ark of Jehovah into the Jordan River and seeing that powerful, scary current. It would overwhelm anyone. Would they have the faith to obey Jehovah's direction and cross that river? Well, let's continue reading now in Joshua chapter 3, verse 14 to see what the priests did. Joshua chapter 3, verse 14. "So when the people departed from their tents, just before crossing the Jordan, the priest carrying the Ark of the Covenant went ahead of the people." Did you notice what the priests did? Did they waver? Did they think, maybe we should wait a couple weeks, maybe we should wait a couple months and stay here where it's safe until the waters recede and it's safer to cross the Jordan in the different time period? No, they did not hesitate. The end of the verse says that these priests went ahead of the people. They immediately took the lead in following Jehovah's direction. Let's continue now reading verses 15 through 17 and see how Jehovah blessed their acts of faith. Verses 15 through 17 say, "As soon as the carriers of the ark reached the Jordan, and the priests carrying the ark dipped their feet into the edge of the waters, now the Jordan overflows its banks all the days of harvest, the waters flowing from upstream stood still. They rose up like a dam very far away at Adam, the city near Zarethan, while the waters descending toward the Sea of the Arabah, the Salt Sea, drained away. They were halted, and the people crossed over opposite Jericho. While the priests carrying the Ark of Jehovah's covenant kept standing still on dry ground in the middle of the Jordan, all Israel crossed over on dry ground until the whole nation had finished crossing the Jordan." What a miracle indeed. As we can see on the image on the screen, the dangerous floodwaters, disappeared. What once seemed like a dangerous, unwise decision from a human standpoint now is a blessing from Jehovah. All because they took decisive action in following Jehovah's direction. The Israelites are now able to cross the Jordan on dry ground following the example of these faithful priests. Well, how can we relate to this experience? During this COVID pandemic, we have definitely needed a lot of faith. When the pandemic began, did you have any reservations regarding the direction that we received on sheltering in place, only going out when it was necessary, thinking that maybe it was a bit extreme for you? Or maybe in your area, it wasn't yet affected by the pandemic, and you didn't feel that that direction specifically applied to you at that time. In either case, aren't we glad that we immediately took the lead in following Jehovah's organization? Very quickly, we were able to see the wisdom and life-saving direction that we received by means of letters to the congregations, JW broadcasts, and governing body updates. The elders also served as an excellent example for us by taking the lead in implementing the safety precautions from the organizations. Almost immediately, we started seeing hand-washing signs and disinfecting stations at our Kingdom Halls. When we were no longer able to meet in person at the Kingdom Hall, well, they took the lead in continuing our meetings by means of video conferencing systems. And aren't we definitely appreciative of their regular phone calls and shepherding visits, ensuring that we're able to cover our daily needs and remain safe? Were you probably nervous when you were informed that we no longer could go door to door and witness in person the way we used to? Thinking, well, that's how we take care of our ministry. How are we going to continue in our personal ministry if we can't even go door to door or meet with our Bible studies and return visits in person? For a moment, it might have seemed as an impossible task. However, weren't you encouraged when you found out that despite all the challenges that COVID brought, because of our decisive action in obeying and continuing to preach and finding alternative methods to preaching in person, more than 241,000 brothers and sisters symbolized their dedication to Jehovah by being baptized in 2020. What a blessing indeed. Well, in the near future, our faith will be tested in a different way. One day, the secular authorities will restrict our preaching work. And like the priest who needed strong faith to take the lead for the Israelites to follow, our brothers and sisters in Russia and in other countries have also had strong faith to continue preaching and worshiping Jehovah despite persecution. Reading their story on jw.org can give us the faith that we need to follow Jehovah's direction when that time comes. One brother who received a suspended prison sentence mentioned what helped him take decisive action in pure worship. He says that he is convinced that our Father helps us, especially in those instances when we have really serious tests. So now I rarely worry about what test might still be ahead. He adds that he is determined to keep doing everything in order to endure all these difficulties and remain faithful to Jehovah. Another brother mentioned what helped him take decisive action in worshiping Jehovah despite persecution. He said that when the raid in my apartment began, I thought of Harold King, who spent over 4 years in solitary confinement in China. Now it was my turn. Never once did I think of taking the easy way out. I repeated these words to myself many times. Now it is my turn. Which course will I take? Well, just like the priest carrying the Ark of Jehovah set the example for others to follow, these brothers are taking the lead in remaining faithful to Jehovah despite persecution, setting an excellent example for us to follow. They not only strengthen our faith, but also give us the courage to likewise remain faithful when we are confronted with persecution in the near future, and encourage us to, despite persecution, take decisive action and see how Jehovah blesses us. If we take a look at the sister in the following image, maybe where she lives, the preaching work is restricted. And right behind her, we see an authority figure. However, she is not wavering. She's not holding back from preaching simply because that authority figure is present. She is giving Jehovah something to bless. Likewise, whether we are limited by our health, by governmental restrictions, or by any other circumstances, May we too, similarly, give Jehovah something to bless. And just like he did with the Israelites, he will bless our acts of faith.
Thank you very much, Brother Nunez. You certainly made that information come alive and reminded us that for Jehovah's people, we need to take quick action to follow his direction. Thank you very much. And now we turn our attention to Brother Kevin Stewart, who will have our spiritual gems. Brother Stewart, please.
We look forward to your research and your comments for Digging for Gems this week. Could we please have a reader for Joshua chapter 5, verse 14 and 15? Joshua 5, 14 and 15. Sister Waddell, please.
Joshua chapter 5. To this he said, "No, but I have come as prince of Jehovah's army." With that, Joshua fell with his face to the ground and prostrated himself and said to him, "What does my Lord have to say to his servant?" The prince of Jehovah's army replied to Joshua, "Remove your sandals from your feet, because the place where you are standing is holy." At once Joshua did so.
Great. Thank you for the reading. So the question to go along with this, who was thought to be the chief of Jehovah's army? See, could we have Sister Castro, please?
It is none other than the pre-human Jesus who would later become Messiah, the leader.
Very nice. And Brother Zadarozny, please.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty comforting in our reference material. It helps us to see that this same chief or prince, Jesus Christ, appeared a couple of times throughout the Bible as leader. We know this, but it's comforting because when he got involved on these few occasions, he was victorious. And it gives us confidence as he continues to lead us in spiritual warfare now, and of course, when he takes lead in the future war of Armageddon.
Great point. Thank you for that. That was nice. Thank you for the comments so far. Now we'll go ahead and open it up for personal research. What spiritual gems from this week's Bible reading would you like to share regarding Jehovah, the field ministry, or something else? And could we have Sister Collar, please?
There was a talk given during a Gilead graduation some years back that was based off of Joshua chapter 3. And when speaking about the priests who were to step into the Jordan, I think Brother Roberson applied it beautifully when he said that there will be Jordans in your life that will separate you from your blessings if you allow them to. But if you display the faith to get your feet wet, Jehovah will help you to cross those Jordans.
Very nice. Thank you. And could we have Brother Anderson, please?
In Joshua chapter 4, verses 5 through 7, Jehovah commanded the 12 men to take a rock from the river and to stack it on the side of the bank. And in time, that would prove to serve as a memorial or teaching point when their children would ask, what do these stones represent? And it was a reminder of Jehovah's saving power. Likewise, today, we too have memorials that we can look back on to remind us of Jehovah's saving power. We have the experiences of our brothers and sisters right now in Russia, in the past in Germany, and many yearbooks that show how Jehovah's people have always survived persecution because of Jehovah's saving power.
Nice. Thanks for tying in the modern day experiences. And Sister Zadarozny, please.
In chapter 3, verses 9 and 10, Joshua said to the Israelites, "Listen to Jehovah your God, and you'll know that a living God is among you, and he would drive away the threatening nations." So if they listened to God, they didn't have to worry about what laid before them. Likewise, today, we also live in a dangerous world, but if we continue to listen to Jehovah's direction through his organization and the faithful and discreet slave, we will see for ourselves the living God in action, protecting us from our enemies.
Good point. And Brother Gallo, please.
In Joshua chapter 4, verse 14, it doesn't say that Joshua exalted himself or that Joshua was exalted, but rather Jehovah exalted Joshua in front of all the eyes of Israel. So we may at times feel the want or desire to exalt ourselves, but we know that Jehovah will exalt us if we follow his direction, and we should leave it up to him.
Nice. Good comment. And could we have Sister Castro, please?
And in chapter 5, verses 2 and 8, when Joshua receives detailed instructions on how to take the city of Jericho, some of the instructions may have not made sense or to be a good strategy, like when Jehovah commanded that all the men be circumcised, which would leave them indisposed for several days. But their obedience was blessed. So this reminds me that Jehovah is in control and he provides the details. We just need to obey the instructions.
Thank you for that. Nice. Brother Gomes, please.
I enjoyed Joshua chapter 3, verse 13. That's the point that was highlighted about the priest carrying the ark entering the waters of the Jordan. One of the things that it doesn't mention and that they did not know was how long they would have to stand in the waters for. They weren't given a specific amount of time that they would have to wait for the whole nation to cross the Jordan. And I was thinking about the measure of faith, not only to step in the waters, but then to understand that you would have to stay and wait for the whole nation to cross. Many of us, none of us had any idea how long we would have to go through Zoom and Zoom meetings and Zoom service and pioneering through all of it. And it took a great measure of faith to take that step into Zoom and being pioneers and being in the field and working hard to learn the technical side of it. But as we know, all of us who were able to take that step and have gone through the learning curve of Zoom, Jehovah has really blessed us with being able to be with our congregations and still receive our spiritual food.
Good details. Thank you. Yeah. Brother Powers, please.
I also appreciated verse 13, where Joshua accurately describes Jehovah as the Lord of the whole earth. Those Israelites were going to a new land with new challenges, and that could be scary. But knowing that Jehovah is the Lord of the whole earth, remembering that, help them to remember that Jehovah would be there too, even if it's new to them. And I found that encouraging for challenges that I face that may make me uncertain. Remembering that Jehovah is the Lord of the whole earth, not just the places I'm familiar with, can give me courage.
Great, thank you. And Sister Rodriguez, please.
In Joshua 4, verse 23 to 24, we see that when the Israelites crossed the Jordan on dry land successfully, Joshua did not take credit for this. And how we know that is because when he built the memorial, he also said to the people, Jehovah's hand is strong. So he gave all the credit to Jehovah. So we should always remember that all that we accomplish is always for Jehovah's glory, to make him stand out.
Yes, great point. Thank you so much. And Brother McKeechin?
Like Brother Gallo, I also enjoyed Joshua 4:14. Again, it states that on that day, Jehovah exalted Joshua, and they deeply respected him all the days of his life, just as they had respected Moses. And the cross-reference there regarding Moses, Exodus 14:31 is referenced. And it says that Israel saw the great power that Jehovah wielded against the Egyptians, and the people began to fear Moses. And so in our congregation, there are people, of course, who take the lead. We have our congregation elders. On the circuit, there are brothers who take the lead, such as our circuit overseer, and on up into the governing body. We can also develop a great fear and reverence for the direction they give us as we observe the way Jehovah is clearly blessing them and using them to accomplish the ministry.
Nice. Thank you. And Brother Collar, please.
Yeah, I really like the expression in 3:5 where it says, tomorrow Jehovah will do wonderful things among you. It kind of just inspired awe and excitement in me, because obviously the nation had no idea what Jehovah was about to do. And we don't really know what Jehovah will do for us in the future to protect us, but we can be assured that they can be wonderful.
Nice. And Sister Zadarozny?
In chapter 5, verses 1, we see that because the Amorites had lost heart and courage against the Israelites, they didn't attack them, or they had heard that the victories were from their God, and they also had heard about the miracle of the crossing of the Jordan. This lined up at the exact time when the Israelite males were circumcised, which would have left them vulnerable. But this fulfilled Jehovah's promise in protecting them from the neighboring nations.
Nice. And then finally, Brother Zadarozny, please.
Yeah, in chapter 5, verses 11 and 12, we see Jehovah provided the manna until the Israelites could cultivate from the produce of Canaan. So really we see here Jehovah gave them what they needed during this transition. It made me think some have wondered after Armageddon, there's no doubt going to be some loss of infrastructure. What will we really do for food or some of the other necessities that we've come used to? Well, this account can reassure us that in this transition, Jehovah will provide for us.
Friends, thank you so much for all your great comments and all the good research. We really benefited from it. We'll give our attention back to Brother Waddell.
Thank you, Brother Anderson, as well as all the commenters. It never ceases to amaze how many good comments can come from just a little research. So thank you all for your participation. So now we continue with our Bible reading. If you have your Bibles open, please turn to Joshua chapter 3. And Brother Anderson is going to be reading for us verses 1 through 13. Joshua 3, 1 through 13.
Then Joshua got up early in the morning, and he and all the Israelites departed from Shittim and came to the Jordan. They spent the night there before crossing over. After 3 days, the officers passed throughout the camp and commanded the people, "As soon as you see the ark of the covenant of Jehovah your God being carried by the Levitical priest, you should depart from your place and follow it. But keep a distance of about 2,000 cubits from it. Do not come any nearer to it, so that you may know which is the way to go, for you have not traveled on this way before." Joshua now said to the people, "Sanctify yourselves, for tomorrow Jehovah will do wonderful things among you." Then Joshua said to the priest, "Take up the ark of the covenant and pass ahead of the people." So they took up the ark of the covenant and went ahead of the people. Then Jehovah said to Joshua, "This day I will start to exalt you in the eyes of all Israel, so that they may know that I will be with you, just as I was with Moses. You should give this command to the priest carrying the ark of the covenant. When you reach the edge of the waters of the Jordan, you should stand still in the Jordan." And Joshua said to the Israelites, "Come here and listen to the words of Jehovah, your God." Joshua then said, "By this you will know that a living God is among you, and that he will without fail drive away from before you the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Hivites, the Perizzites, the Girgashites, the Amorites, and the Jebusites. Look, the ark of the covenant of the Lord of the whole earth is passing ahead of you into the Jordan. Now take 12 men from the tribes of Israel, 1 man for each tribe. And as soon as the soles of the feet of the priest carrying the ark of Jehovah, the Lord of the whole earth, touch the waters of the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan flowing from upstream will be halted, and they will stand still like a dam."
Thank you very much, Brother Anderson. Excellent reading. Excellent reading. Some things I appreciated in your reading, Brother Anderson. First of all, of course, some of the things we always look for. Your reading was clear and concise. You were very smooth. You held your Bible up, which is always important when we're reading so that the audience can hear us clearly, whether we're on Zoom or in person. And additionally, the point of counsel that we've been asked to work on here is number 10 in our reading and teaching brochure, which is modulation. Now, what is modulation? Well, in summary, it's really conveying the ideas clearly and steering our emotions, as it says, by varying our volume, pitch, and pace. Now, in our reading, there was a couple of places where you did just that. For example, in verse 5 of the reading, it says, Joshua now said to the people, "Sanctify yourselves, for tomorrow Jehovah will do wonderful things among you." Another example that again you did very nicely in verse 11. It said, "Look, the ark of the covenant of the Lord of the whole earth is passing ahead of you into the Jordan." So obviously those are places where our modulation needs to be consistent so that we convey those ideas correctly. And you did an excellent job, Brother Anderson. We appreciate your hard work in that, and we look forward to hearing more in the future. So thank you very much. So now we turn to our second section of our Christian Life and Ministry meeting, applying ourselves to the field ministry. And we have a part that's entitled, "Increase Your Joy in the Ministry, Use Our Research Tools." And let's listen to Brother Josiah Collar as he shares this information.
Well, we often hear the comparison between building strong faith personally to a literal building project. We also compare skillfully teaching a Bible student to skillfully using literature and literal building techniques and tools, don't we? Well, why are these such good analogies? Well, in both situations, success or failure can depend on our foundation and how adept we are at using the tools provided. But fortunately, Jehovah and his organization have given us many tools, haven't they? For example, we have tracts, magazines, brochures, books. Many of these we've probably been using for years to help teach individuals about Jehovah. Even more recently, we've been given videos, other online media, so that we can skillfully teach young and old, no matter who they are, about Jehovah and what he wants from them. In addition to these tools, though, the organization has also given us research tools. So maybe a question for our audience, thinking about the research tools provided, what are some that you particularly have enjoyed using? Please, Brother Gomes.
I like the ease of being able to use Watchtower Online Library. It's a very, very deep research tool wherever you are. You can pull it up on your phone, or if you're at home, you can sit down and pull it up on your computer and go pretty far back with the publications as far as the dates go. Translate them if you're serving in a different language pretty easily. So that's one of my favorite.
Yeah, that's a great one for sure. Thank you, Brother Zadarozny.
Well, I like them all so much, but of course, but the research guide for Jehovah's Witnesses, I love the articles it pulls up, and it, as we'll even see today in the video, it can give us the roundabout subject. So we may be focused on one word or one subject, but then there's also auxiliary articles that, you know, may apply to our student or even to ourselves if it's something that we're struggling with or interested in.
Yeah, very nice. Thank you. You can tell just from those two brief expressions that we can find a lot of joy, can't we, in using these research tools? And we've probably all experienced that. We've found a spiritual gem through some deep study, maybe that benefit us personally. Maybe we're able to help someone else understand something more clearly. We know that brings us joy and happiness. So it makes sense that if we find that joy, we want our Bible students and those who want to learn more about Jehovah, we want them to find the same joy. So, of course, we want to teach them how to use the tools provided, not only our basic ones, whatever we're studying with them, a magazine or a brochure, but we want them to be able to use these research tools also so they can deepen their relationship with Jehovah. So let's watch a video now to see how this can be done. The video is entitled, "Experience the Joy of Disciple Making, Accept Jehovah's Help Using Research Tools."
Making a friend with God.
Yeah, I don't know how to do that.
Make a friend? But you've done fine with me.
But I can see you. But God? A friend? Seriously?
How about what you can see? What does creation teach us about him?
Not much. Maybe evolve or your species dies? It doesn't really help.
Well, I'm not talking about evolution. I'm talking about the things that God's created.
You don't suppose he's got a little workshop up there, building things one at a time, do you? In the real world, things evolve. It's all random. Don't know what that tells me about him.
I wasn't ready for this. Evolution isn't my strong suit. I need help. This could be good. Many who believe evolution Ancient tidal pool, chemicals spontaneously assembled. Too deep. Wait, maybe what does the evidence reveal? For a cell to survive, DNA, RNA, inanimate chemicals, probability, I'm not sure this is what she needs. Her real issue was getting to know someone she can't see. Maybe that's the best place to begin. One widespread false teaching robs people of hope, implies that human life has no purpose. This could be it. Establish the positive. What creation really says about Jehovah versus what evolution obscures. Okay, so you got me thinking, and I did some research.
Okay, yeah.
And I think you'll really like what I found.
Okay.
Come, sit down.
Okay.
Let's do this. Okay, so
So what a wonderful teaching video, isn't this? So let's discuss this video and see what we can learn and how we can apply it to ourselves even. So the first question, what objection did Jade raise regarding creation? Please, Sister Waddell.
I appreciate when they were talking, Jade was wondering, how can you make friends with Jehovah who you can't see?
Yeah, no, that was definitely the main objection. Thank you. Brother Stewart.
And then she went on to say that she really believed in evolution, that's what was happening in the real world, and just random things evolving. So because she believed in evolution, then she really couldn't see any qualities in God.
Yeah, no, for sure. And maybe we've even found individuals like that who share our same sentiments. So we'll see how we're able to overcome this. So the next question, where did Nita find information about the subject? Brother Zadarozny?
Well, as we can see in our picture, she went to the research guide. She typed in the particular subject or looked at the particular subject that she first thought might get to the bottom of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. It was nice to see that process of how she was able to decipher that. So then that kind of leads us to the third question. How did she select information that best applied to Jade? Please, Sister Zadarozny.
Well, her initial searches still didn't focus on her student's main issue, which was being friends with someone you can't see. So she continued searching until she found what creation really says about Jehovah versus what evolution obscures.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Brother Nunez.
She also found a couple articles that might have been too deep for Jade to understand. It might have answered her question, but it wasn't up to her understanding level. So she looked for something that was more easily understood by her student.
Yeah, that's a nice point. It's nice to see how she was able to figure out what to use skillfully. Good. And then our final question, what effect did using our research tools have on Nita? Brother McKeechin.
Well, you can see just by that expression as illustrated in the picture, she was filled with joy, and that infectious enthusiasm even helped Jade to be intrigued as to what this answer would be.
Yeah, thank you. That was neat to see that expression on Jade and Nita. Please, Brother or Sister Rodriguez.
Yeah, and from that we learned that the information, the truth has to first reach our heart and move us, because if it doesn't, we're not going to be able to convey that to the students. So just like Nita felt that joy, that enthusiasm is contagious, but we first had to experience that ourselves.
Yeah, that's an excellent point as well. Thank you. All right, so it is very clearly highlighted, isn't it, that we have the tools provided. We can be skilled at building our own faith. We can be effective at building faith in others, and we can experience that joy. But of course, we want our Bible students to experience the joy as well. So the more we can teach them how to skillfully use our tools and our research tools, the more they can find joy and finding spiritual treasures also.
Thank you, Brother Caller. Excellent coverage of our information. Isn't it reassuring that Jehovah fully equips us to carry out our ministry? Well, we continue with our applying ourselves to the field ministry. We now turn to our Bible study. And Sister Zalma Rodriguez, as well as she's going to be assisted by Sister Amanda Collar. And their theme is, how can the Bible help you? Let's give our attention to our sisters.
Amanda, to answer the question posed last week, can we really believe what the Bible promises? Let us consider the evidence presented in the first lesson, entitled, How Can the Bible Help You? Can you read the first paragraph?
Sure, it says, nearly all of us have questions about life, suffering, death, and the future. We are also concerned about day-to-day matters, such as making a living or having a happy family. Many people find that the Bible not only helps them answer life's big questions, but also gives them practical advice for daily living. Do you think that the Bible can help anyone you know?
How would you answer the question you just read?
You know, I don't know. It's not that I don't have questions myself, because I do, but I personally have never looked for answers or advice in the Bible.
You're not alone in thinking that way. But keeping what you said in mind, let us consider some questions the Bible will answer for you. Can you please read the second paragraph?
The Bible answers these important questions. How did life begin? Why are we here? Why do innocent people suffer? What happens when a person dies? If everyone wants peace, why is there so much war? What will happen to the earth in the future? The Bible encourages us to seek answers to such questions, and millions have found its answers very satisfying.
So what are some questions that the Bible answers?
How did life begin? Why are we here? And why do innocent people suffer? You know, I've also asked myself, why do innocent people have to suffer?
Have you noticed any motivating reasons to look for answers to questions in the Bible?
Yeah, it says that there are two. It says that the Bible encourages us to seek answers to such questions, and that millions have found answers.
So then, Amanda, could it be worthwhile to invest time to look for your answers in the Bible?
Yeah, I think it's well worth investigating if I can get answers to my questions.
I agree. I'm glad to hear you say that. So let's find out how the Bible can help us to enjoy our daily life. Can you please read the third paragraph?
The Bible gives us good advice. For example, it teaches families how to be truly happy. It offers advice on how to deal with stress and how to enjoy our work. You will learn what the Bible teaches about these topics and much more as we discuss this material together. You may come to agree that all scripture, everything in the Bible, is beneficial.
So, Amanda, how can the Bible help us to enjoy our daily life?
Well, it says here that the Bible can teach families to be happy. We can learn how to deal with stress and enjoy our work. You know, that's truly remarkable. It's actually saying that the Bible can teach us how to live, but how is that possible?
As we continue, we will answer that question for you, okay? But now, let's take a look at the scripture cited here, 2 Timothy 3:16. How does it read?
Well, it says all scripture, everything in the Bible is beneficial.
Now, would you say that there are some portions of the Bible that are of less value?
Well, I see that the emphasis is on the whole Bible, so it says everything should be considered.
And looking a little closer at these words, does it sound like the Bible may be of some help to you or that it will help you?
Well, I see that the word beneficial is used, so it's telling me that the Bible will help me and even teach me true happiness.
Absolutely. Amanda, you got the point. Up to now, we've learned that the Bible can answer all of our questions and that it can teach us to be truly happy. Now, let us continue our lesson and see how the Bible can guide us and answer, or help us make good decisions in our life.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you very much, sisters. Nicely done. Nicely done. We appreciate very much your conversational manner. Sister Rodriguez, you used questions very effectively. You reached the conclusion, could it be worthwhile to look into the Bible, helping her to draw her own conclusions. So I thought that was excellent the way you handled that. The point of counsel that we were asked to work on for this part was number 15, express with conviction. Now, what is conviction? Well, the dictionary definition for conviction from Webster's dictionary, it says, it's not just having a strong belief or opinion, but it also states that conviction indicates whether or not our beliefs are absolutely true. So, in other words, for us to have conviction, it's important that we have convictions because we want our household to understand that we believe this information is the absolute truth, which of course it is. Now, one point that was mentioned in the material was that the Bible gives us good advice. And we thought that your use of conviction was apparent. Your householder, Sister Color, understood that. And that was an excellent example for us, Sister Rodriguez. So nicely done. And we thank you very much for handling that part for us today. So now we move on to our next section of our meeting, Living as Christians. And we have a song that's been chosen for this part, song number 96, entitled God's Own Book, A Treasure. So now we continue with the part entitled Ramapo, Make Yourselves Available. Let's give our attention to Brother McKeechin.
Well, since 2014, our organization has had explosive growth in the number of videos that we produce. And I think you'll agree, after seeing the thrilling convention drama, Daniel, A Lifetime of Faith, it's just evidence of just how beneficial these videos are, both for our personal faith, but of course, as well as our ministry. So to that aim, during the 2019 annual meeting, we learned that a new world headquarters facility was going to be created that would be dedicated to such videos and other media needed in our spiritual activities. Now, of course, as you can imagine, this is a massive project. In fact, it's estimated that during peak construction, there will be a need for some 1,500 volunteers every day. How can you contribute to these efforts? Well, that's what we're going to discuss in further detail during this part. But let's watch the following video, Ramapo, Make Yourself Available.
This is Ramapo, a site about the same size as Warwick, which will include a new media production center and the largest film studio space the organization has ever undertaken. It's hard to imagine all the work that will take place to complete this complex. But one thing is very clear. We will need lots of help.
For over 2 years, we've been planning this project. We're in the final stages now of our planning and approval process. In fact, we are months ahead of schedule.
Soon we will see the site works going on, we'll see the utilities going in, we'll see the drainage going in. But of course, a tightened schedule means nothing unless we have the housing and the volunteers.
Ramapo is not a bustling city. Without housing nearby, volunteers would have been transported very long distances. But with Jehovah's help, arrangements have been made for quality housing only 5 minutes from the building site, which will house the majority of the volunteers working on the project. This is a huge accomplishment, since this will help to reduce fatigue and cost.
With the progress on the building permits, with the housing that's now available, with the confidence that the governing body has in this project, we can see that this project has Jehovah's backing.
If you were one of the 27,000 volunteers that worked on the Warwick project, you know the challenges and the blessings that come with working on such a unique project.
Before Warwick, we were very engaged with our secular careers. Sarah was an asset manager at an investment company, and I was a full-time firefighter.
We had a nice house, a brand new boat in the driveway. We had a dog.
We were making our meetings, we were going out in service, but in our hearts, we knew that we could do more.
We realized the only thing standing between us and doing more for Jehovah was us.
We had to take a very honest and humbling look at our lives and what we were doing. We obviously prayed to Jehovah pretty constantly about it. We made that decision-making and that simplifying process a part of our family study every week.
We made a list of our goals, a timeline, that we thought was reasonable. Jehovah took our plan and fast-forwarded it.
So we had simplified our lives, we quit our jobs, we filled out our applications. Probably one of the hardest things that we had to do was find a home for our dog. We eventually found her a home with a beautiful family. And then we packed our car and we started driving to New York.
Our first day at Warwick was surreal.
Meeting all the brothers and sisters, truly a joyful time. You couldn't wipe the smiles off our faces if you tried.
The training I received is beyond anything I expected. I got to work with brothers who had been working in carpentry for 30, 40, 50 years, and they were patient and kind.
I was in carpentry too. Also, I was able to be on part of the emergency response team from my fire department and EMS training. You kind of have in your mind you're just going to do construction, but then you're fed spiritually so much through the morning worship programs, through the Watchtower studies and the special lectures.
It helped me to see my assignment in a different way, more as service to Jehovah, praise to Jehovah. Our life had been changed. Even just after, I think, 6 months, we knew we weren't going back to the old life. We couldn't.
I think we realized that not only did we want to serve Jehovah full-time, but that it was an attainable goal. We could do it. My advice is if you were going to apply to Ramapo, do it. And if you weren't thinking about doing it, do it. Definitely, it's worthwhile. You're going to have so much fun. You're going to gain so many friendships. You're giving Jehovah your best. You won't look back with any regrets. It's really a beautiful thing.
Jehovah is opening the door to that unique avenue of service once again, the opportunity to work hard next to future friends and to have a life-changing experience. Proverbs 16:3 says, "Commit to Jehovah whatever you do, and your plans will succeed." So, what can you do right now?
You can start with a prayer to Jehovah to increase your desire to come and help. You can talk to construction volunteers in your local congregation or in your circuit and find out what it's like to serve on a large project like this. Learn a new skill. If you already have a construction skill, start planning now to come and work on this project. If your circumstances don't allow you to come to the project, all of us can have a part by our prayers and our voluntary donations. Filling out an application is easier than ever before. And if your circumstances change, you can update your application online.
If you can submit an application now, you can be invited to work on other theocratic projects as they become available. This will give you a taste of what it's like to work on a large theocratic project, and you can be confident that Jehovah will bless your efforts to volunteer.
And as parents, we now have a golden opportunity to work with our teenagers and help them to set a goal of working on this project. After all, these teenagers are our future construction servants.
Jehovah inspired David of old to pen words that apply to our time. Your people will offer themselves willingly. Jehovah's people are busier than ever before, in the ministry, in the congregation, and theocratic projects. This project will take much work, but Jehovah has placed tremendous confidence in his people. And we know that with his help, we will succeed.
Well, it's nice to hear more details about the Ramapo project and, of course, see the beautiful plans laid out. But now we can discuss in more detail exactly how can you and I contribute to these efforts. So we have 4 questions we're going to discuss. The first is this for you. What blessings did Brother and Sister Ruxtall enjoy as a result of simplifying their lives? What did you see? Let's begin with Sister Woodall.
I appreciate that they mentioned once they started simplifying their lives, they put it to prayer. They made it part of their family worship. But as soon as they quit their jobs and it was starting to be in progress, they said once they got to Warwick, their smiles never left them.
Yeah, exactly. Brother Zadarosny.
Yeah, and they expressed it what many have expressed. Once they kind of changed things in their lives, got involved in this type of theocratic project, and it could be other things like this, but they never could go back to that white picket fence kind of life. They just were in love with this type of service, with the friendships you make, and their lives were changed.
Excellent. Quite so. Brother Woodall.
Yeah, the one thing I appreciated was some of the decisions they had to make weren't easy. Of course, they had a pet that they loved, some other things that were of concern to them, but they made sure all those things were cared for properly so that they could focus on their new assignment, and they were blessed because of that.
Yes, exactly. And Brother Gomes.
They were also able to experience coming to appreciate that a theocratic project is not all about the work, but also very much about taking care of everyone in a spiritual way. And they felt like they were really able to enjoy a spiritual banquet while they were working on the project.
Yes, most definitely. Thank you for all your expressions. There were many blessings that they enumerated. But let's look at the second question. What can you do now if you would like to work on the Ramapo project? Brother Stewart, let's begin with you.
One thing we can do is pray to Jehovah, and the video that the brother specifically mentioned praying for the desire even to want to help during this Ramapo project.
Yes, indeed. And he mentioned Proverbs 16:3 to that aim. Commit to Jehovah, whatever you do, and your plans will succeed. If we can get Brother Collar.
I like the brother's expression too. He said to apply if you've been thinking about it, and even if you haven't been thinking about it, to go ahead and apply. So it's practical. Put the application in and let Jehovah bless that.
Yes, indeed. And Brother Gomes, please.
And also too, it was mentioned, over 27,000 people work on the project. And the likelihood that we know one of those people is very high, and we could ask them about their experiences if we're thinking about applying, and glean something from them as well.
Yes, indeed. And Sister Rodriguez.
I like the example of the sister. They put her in the carpentry shop. She said that she learned a lot from people who were serving for over 30 years. So you don't necessarily have to know a skill. You just have to have the spirit, and Jehovah will take care of that.
Yes, indeed, indeed. And of course, if we have the opportunity to learn additional skills, certainly that could be of assistance too. Thank you for your expressions on that as well. Now, our third question is, if you would like to work on the project, why should you submit the application now? So not waiting for 2022, but right now. Why should that application go in? Brother Stewart.
When we submit it now, it gives us the opportunity to work on maybe some of the smaller projects before going into the large scale project. So we get some good experience beforehand.
Yes, exactly. And Brother Anderson.
And right now, Ramapo planning is moving so quickly that we don't want to miss the bus. So as they're trying to figure out how many people we need for this particular assignment, we want to have our name already available to be used.
Yes, quite true. Quite true. Our last question, if your circumstances do not allow you to work on the project, how can you still take part in it? Brother Gallo.
Well, we can always pray for the planning and the project, but also we can also make maybe re-examine our financial contributions, and we can willingly and prayerfully contribute towards the project.
Yes, indeed. And let's see, Brother Rodriguez.
I like on the video they show parents too. They might not be in a position to come themselves, but if they have teenagers, young ones, they're preparing them and instilling in them the goal to apply to be in one of those projects in the future.
Yes, excellent, excellent. Thank you for all of your expressions and comments. There was a lot that we could take from that video. Clearly, we want to start planning our own personal contribution to Ramapo right now. And as Psalm 110, verse 3, which was quoted, we know Jehovah's people everywhere will offer themselves willingly in whatever way they can. And so we are excited to see how Jehovah is going to bless this project as a whole, but also how he's going to bless our personal efforts to contribute. But before we conclude, there is one brief announcement we wanted to make regarding the Ramapo project, and I'll read it now. It states, the planning for the Ramapo project is progressing very well. We hope to have the needed permits so that construction can start in early 2022. Contractors will perform much of the first phase of the work, including the blasting, earth-moving, utilities, and preparation for building foundations. Please speak to the secretary about how you can apply for the project. If you have previously submitted an application for volunteer program, that's the A119, please confirm that the information you have submitted is up to date. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother McKeachin, for generating some enthusiasm for this upcoming project. Obviously, we can see that it's going to have Jehovah's blessing, and we look forward to seeing what it has in store for us. Thank you very much. So now we continue with our Congregation Bible Study. And Brother Joshua Powers is going to be conducting that for us, and the reader will be Brother Zadarozny. So let's give our brothers our attention.
Well, we have the Congregation Bible Study, of course, today, and we closed out chapter 13 last week of Pure Worship of Jehovah Restored at Last. This week we begin chapter 14. And the title of this chapter is This is the Law of the Temple. Where does that title come from? And what will be the focus of chapter 14? Let's watch our introductory video that will set the stage for this entire chapter.
In the preceding chapter, we saw an overview of what Ezekiel's temple vision meant for the Jews held captive in Babylon. In this chapter, we'll discuss some specific lessons that the vision conveyed to the Jews. That'll help us understand the vital message that the temple vision has for us today and in the future. Read with me, please, the theme scripture at Ezekiel chapter 43 and verse 12. This is the law of the temple. The entire territory all around the top of the mountain is most holy. Look, this is the law of the temple. When you study this chapter, this is the law of the temple. Look for the answers to these questions. What practical lessons did the exiled Jews likely draw from Ezekiel's temple vision? In what ways does the temple vision apply in our own time? As you look over the diagram of Ezekiel's visionary temple, what lessons would you like to apply in your own worship? Ezekiel's vision of the temple reminds us that Jehovah is the grand instructor. Using vivid, detailed word pictures, he teaches us so much that we need to know about serving him acceptably. As the world's moral standards continue to decline, we must remember that Jehovah's lofty standards do not change. He required that the Israelites render him pure worship, and he requires the same of us today.
What an excellent introduction to this chapter. So as Brother Lucioni said, the theme text for this chapter is Ezekiel 43:12. And part of that is the title. This is the law of the temple. The focus of this chapter will be the temple vision, practical lessons for Ezekiel's day, and what it means for us today. Specifically, in this lesson, we'll get into that first part, what it meant for Ezekiel's people at that time, the lessons, and of course, there are principles behind that. So we'll start with paragraphs 1 and 2, and we have Brother Matthew Zadarozny to read that for us. Please, Brother Zadarozny.
Ezekiel did not see in vision the great spiritual temple that the Apostle Paul discussed centuries later. We learn this in the preceding chapter. We also learn that the vision was designed to teach God's people the importance of divine standards for pure worship. Only by following those standards could the people enjoy a renewed relationship with Jehovah. We may thus see why Jehovah twice emphasized this key thought in a single verse. This is the law of the temple. Now we need to consider two further questions. First, what specific lessons about Jehovah's standards for pure worship might the Jews of Ezekiel's day have drawn from this temple vision? The answer to that question will help us to address our second question. What does the vision mean for us in these troubled last days?
Thank you very much. So before we ask the question, could we ask for a volunteer to read Ezekiel 43, verse 12, our theme text? Sister Collar?
It reads, "This is the law of the temple. The entire territory all around the top of the mountain is most holy. Look, this is the law of the temple."
Excellent. Thank you very much. Yes, this is the law of the temple. So our A question, what did we learn about Ezekiel's temple vision in the preceding chapter? Sister Woodell?
We see that Ezekiel did not see the vision that Paul had discussed. We'll also learn this vision was to teach Jehovah's people the importance of divine standards for pure worship.
Excellent. Thank you, Sister Woodell. Sister Castro.
I'm sorry. It was also the temple that Ezekiel saw was a glorious depiction of how Jehovah will restore pure worship.
Very nice. Yes. The Rodriguez family?
Yeah, and in the verse that we read, Ezekiel 43:12, we notice Jehovah's emphasis on this, because it mentions twice, this is the law, and look, this is the law. It shows us how Jehovah feels about it, the importance of following the standards for pure worship.
Thank you. And Sister Zadarozny?
Sorry, I didn't have my hand up.
Oh, sorry about that. Okay, I'm sorry. Maybe there's a little bit of a technical problem on my end. So let's ask our second question. What two questions will we consider in this chapter? Sister Rodriguez?
The first is, what specific lessons about Jehovah's standards for pure worship might the Jews of Ezekiel's day have drawn from this temple vision? And the second, what does the vision mean for us in these troubled last days?
Excellent. Thank you very much, Sister Rodriguez. So this gets us right into that first part. In our subheading, what lessons did the vision teach in ancient times? Brother Zadarozny, please read for us paragraph 3.
To answer the first question, let us focus on a few striking features of this temple vision. The high mountain. The people would likely have associated this setting of Ezekiel's vision with Isaiah's heartwarming restoration prophecy. But what did seeing Jehovah's house on such a lofty mountain teach them? It taught them that pure worship should be exalted, lifted up, held high above all else. Of course, pure worship is naturally exalted, for it is an arrangement from the one who is exalted far above all other gods. But the people had not been doing their part. For centuries, they had repeatedly allowed pure worship to become debased, abandoned, polluted. Seeing God's sacred house exalted, lifted up to a well-deserved position of glory and prominence, surely moved right-hearted ones to feel ashamed.
Thank you very much. So our question on paragraph 3, how might the vision setting on a high mountain have moved people to godly shame? Brother Zadarozny.
Well, one thing that we see is they may have immediately associated it with Isaiah's prophecy about pure worship on this high mountain. And that would start to get them thinking.
Very nice. Thank you for bringing that in. Brother McKeechin.
It would be a very vivid way to illustrate how Jehovah's worship would be prominent, glorious, elevated above all other forms of worship, something that they had neglected to do in the past.
Thank you for highlighting that word picture. Brother Collar?
And then in Psalms 97:9, it says that Jehovah's most high, that he's the one that's exalted. So of course there's nothing wrong with Jehovah's arrangement. There's nothing to be ashamed of there, because it's always going to be high. It should always be placed up high. But yeah, the people had drug it down for themselves personally because they were putting other things first and had debased God's house.
Thank you. Yes. What a problem. Brother Gomes.
At this point too, seeing this word picture and really understanding how highly exalted it was, this would not only move them to be able to recognize where Jehovah's standards are, but it would also move them to feel ashamed regarding their neglect towards Jehovah's standards.
Thank you, Brother Gomes. And Brother Anderson?
In addition to that, being that the temple was on top of the mountain, it shows that it wasn't easy to necessarily get to. So this wasn't worship that they could easily stroll onto, like if it were on flat ground, for example. So it just goes to show the amount of effort the Israelites needed to put in to obtain Jehovah's approved level of worship.
Thank you, Brother Anderson. So that's the lesson from where the temple is in the vision, on the high mountain. Let's move on to another aspect of the vision and the lesson they could take from it. Paragraphs 4 and 5, please, Brother Zadarozny.
The lofty gates. Early in the vision, Ezekiel watched his angelic guide measure the gates. Those structures were about 100 feet, 30 meters in height. There were guard chambers within those entryways. What might have all of this had suggested to those who studied this plan? Jehovah told Ezekiel, pay close attention to the entryway of the temple. Why? Because the people had been bringing individuals who were uncircumcised in heart and flesh right into God's sacred house of worship. The result? They profane my temple, Jehovah said. Those uncircumcised in flesh had failed to obey a clear command from God that went back to the days of Abraham. But those who were uncircumcised in heart had a worse problem. They were stubbornly rebellious, unresponsive to Jehovah's direction and guidance. Such people should not have been allowed to enter Jehovah's sacred house of worship. Jehovah hates hypocrisy, and his people had allowed hypocrisy to flourish in his house. The gates and the guard chambers in the visionary temple clearly taught the lesson, no more of such abuses. The lofty standards for entry into God's house must be upheld. Only then would Jehovah bless the people's worship.
Thank you very much. Our question on paragraphs 4 and 5. What lesson might Ezekiel's audience have learned from the lofty gates of the temple? Sister Whitell?
Ezekiel is reminded to pay close attention to the entryway of the temple, because sadly, the people coming into Jehovah's house were uncircumcised in heart and flesh. In Ezekiel chapter 44, verse 7, it said, when you bring foreigners who are uncircumcised in heart and flesh into my sanctuary, they profound my temple. So he was encouraged to pay attention to the entryways.
Indeed. Thank you, Sister Whitell. The Rodriguez family, please.
Yes, and I thought it is interesting how the paragraph 4 mentions that this has suggested to those who study this plan. In paragraph 3, we found the expression that it moved the right-hearted ones to feel ashamed. So it's talking about those Israelites that were still looking for the pure worship. And they felt moved by it, and they studied this and gave them hope, because it was telling them Jehovah would not allow this to go on forever. He was not going to put up with this type of hypocrisy.
Thank you, Brother Rodriguez. Brother Anderson.
And Jehovah had held the entire congregation or the nation of Israel accountable. He didn't just hold the ones who were being hypocrites or profaning his name. He actually held the congregation as a whole, which makes sense, because today, if likewise in a congregation setting, if certain ones were allowed to be permitted who are doing things that were wrong, the elders would be held accountable. Likewise, in Jehovah's congregation in the nation of Israel, the responsible men were also held accountable for all the actions of the whole nation for allowing that hypocrisy to flourish.
Thank you. Brother Gallo?
In connection to the comment made previously at Ezekiel 44, verse 7, where it mentions being uncircumcised in heart. Maybe on the outward, they look like they were doing everything right. But we know that the heart condition is what Jehovah looks at and what matters. And so for us is a nice warning that we might on the outside be looking like we're doing everything right, but if our heart condition is not correct, then Jehovah doesn't approve of our worship.
Thank you, Brother Gallo. Yeah, that's an important lesson. So were these gates just extraordinarily high but unattended? Could anybody just walk in even if they didn't measure up? Brother McEachin?
Well, it says that they have guard chambers, and so it shows that Jehovah is standing sentinel with his guards. He is being vigilant to make sure that only those who qualify can actually enter.
Yeah. Thank you, Brother McEachin. Yes. So people couldn't decide. We can't decide the standards that we'll serve Jehovah at. There would be, as it were, guards there to make sure no one who is hypocritical could come in. And it was brought out a little bit, but perhaps we could expand on it. What did it mean to be uncircumcised in heart? Brother Collar?
I like the point in Genesis and Leviticus. It talks about the circumcision of the flesh. That was part of the covenant, so they could be approved to Jehovah. But yet their uncircumcised in heart is even worse than that, because they weren't living up to what their covenant, their vow they made to Jehovah. They were rebellious, they were unresponsive, and yet they were still trying to approach the temple and approach Jehovah.
Excellent. Thank you, Brother Collar. Brother Zadarozny.
So basically, a term we're familiar with is they were leading double lives. They were doing what was required, what could be seen by many, but then they were doing other things in secret or behind closed doors that Jehovah called them hypocrites. And he hates hypocrites, more so though than those who weren't just following the letter of the law.
Good point. Thank you. And a valuable lesson. Excellent. Okay, well, let's move on to our next feature of Ezekiel's visionary temple. And we'll ask Brother Zadarozny to read for us paragraphs 6 and 7.
The perimeter wall. Another striking feature of this visionary temple was the wall around the entire temple area. Ezekiel says that the wall on each side was 500 reeds, or 5,100 feet, 1,555 meters, nearly a mile, or 1.6 kilometers. Yet the temple buildings and courtyards formed a square that was only 500 cubits, or 850 feet, 259 meters to a side. So there was a wide area surrounding the temple, and it was enclosed by that outer wall. For what purpose? Jehovah said, "Now let them put their spiritual prostitution and the carcasses of their kings far away from me, and I will dwell among them forever." The carcasses of their kings likely referred to idolatry. So Jehovah used that wide perimeter in Ezekiel's vision temple to say, in effect, keep all such filth far away. Do not even let it near. If they thus kept their worship pure, Jehovah would bless them with his presence.
Thank you, Brother Zadarozny, for your excellent reading this evening. So that brings us to our question for paragraphs 6 and 7. Our A question: how does Jehovah use the wall around the temple complex to convey a message to his people? Brother Stewart?
Well, the wall surrounding the temple area was nearly a mile in length there, and then the wall that was surrounding the temple buildings and that courtyard, that square, was only 850 feet. So basically the area in between was a wide area between the main wall and then the temple area. So just the importance to keep any, as the paragraph says, keep all filth like idolatry, spiritual prostitution far away from the temple.
Excellent. Thank you, Brother Stewart. Brother Zadarozny.
And not only did Jehovah give this vision, which we see clearly that everything was kept far away, but as Brother Stewart alluded to, he mentioned it. He said, keep all spiritual prostitution. So he wasn't sending mixed signals in this case. He was stating it outright as well as giving the vision.
Excellent. Thank you. Sister Castro.
And there's an interesting term too in Ezekiel 43:9. We see Jehovah's viewpoint towards idolatry. Often the scriptures call it dungy idols, which this term, is a term of contempt, which is found nearly 40 times in the book of Ezekiel. So we see how Jehovah sees this very detestable thing.
Thank you for highlighting Jehovah's feelings on that in the scripture there, Sister Castro. Indeed. So we'd see that big border, you could say. Everything else had to stay far away from the special place that would be Jehovah's temple in this vision. Let's go to our B question and see why this would have special meaning for the Israelites. Our B question, how had Jehovah's people formerly treated his house? And we can refer to the footnote in paragraph 6 on this. Brother Gallo?
The footnote mentions that in ancient Jerusalem, there was only a wall separating Jehovah's temple from the regular housing. So later on, as people strayed from Jehovah's standards, they brought their uncleanness, their idolatry, right up against Jehovah's house. So how detestable that was to Jehovah, and they were defaming it.
Thank you, Brother Gallo. Yes. Can we imagine that, just right up against the wall? Sister Waddell?
I appreciate in that verse it mentions they defiled my holy name by the detestable things they did, so I exterminated them in my anger. So we see how serious that was.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for highlighting that. The Collar family, please.
It almost seemed like they thought this wall was just like a special protection, that Jehovah couldn't see them, the disgusting things they were doing. I think Brother Zadarozny mentioned earlier, it'd be like living a double life and thinking that Jehovah's not going to see it. Of course, he sees everything we do. He saw what they were doing. And because of that, they were disgusting in his eyes.
Indeed. Indeed. Thank you. Thank you, Brother Collar. Brother McKeechin.
And I was trying to picture why was that such a detestable thing to have your doorpost come right against the temple. And really, when you think about it, how that would profane Jehovah by making him someone mundane, as if he was just a neighbor that was right next to your house, instead of really highly elevating Jehovah. And what is even worse is within their own homes, they were involved in idolatry. So that really was degrading to Jehovah, a lack of respect for his lofty standards.
Thank you. Thank you, Brother McKeechin. Yes. Sister Rodriguez?
And previously, they used the word abuse. That's an abuse of Jehovah, thinking that he would tolerate such bad conduct. And for us, we have to be aware that his lofty standards stand till this day. And we cannot be blessed or be approved in his worship if we abuse.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much, Sister Rodriguez. And Brother Gomes?
And two, now with Jehovah using this extra wide perimeter, not only is he setting a standard, but he's also showing them, what you were doing in Jerusalem, that wasn't okay. And now I'm making it clear to you that it isn't okay now. And here are my standards of uprightness and holiness. So he really did make the point clear to keep anything that was unholy and filthy away.
Yeah. Thank you, Brother Gomes. Can we imagine having guests over and making a meal for them and then making them eat that meal on the side of a garbage can with garbage in it? Well, no, that would be ridiculous. That would show a lack of respect for our guests. How much more so having that garbage right next to Jehovah's holy temple. What disrespect. So we see the lessons here that the Israelites, they could see the difference between what they were doing and what's portrayed in the vision. And this could give them lessons. We appreciate also the lessons that you've been bringing out. Perhaps in a little bit of, you could say, review here, what lessons did we draw out of this about Jehovah and his personality? What's acceptable to him? Brother Zadarozny?
Well, one thing that was made clear this week and last week is that Jehovah has standards. He sets them very clearly, precisely, you might say. We don't set the standards. We need to just find out what the standards are and adhere to them.
Good point. Thank you, Brother Zadarozny. Brother Anderson.
And Jehovah being true to his standards balances out with his love for us. Jehovah physically cannot be close to us if we are not living in harmony with his will in a way that he approves. So it's not that Jehovah doesn't love us, but being true to himself, he cannot be close to us in that spiritual state.
Thank you. And Brother Nunez.
And it emphasizes even more so how our worship has to be pure in Jehovah's eyes. Jehovah reads our heart. So even though we might be doing things maybe mechanical, maybe we're doing everything we're supposed to do, and everyone else thinks that we're doing things the correct way. But Jehovah sees what's really behind our motives, and he wants us to not only serve him because we're doing what he asked us to do, but to serve him with pure motives.
Very good point, Brother Nunez. So thank you for your comments. Beautiful lesson. We look forward to what we'll discuss next week. And thank you for your reading, Brother Zadarozny. Let's give our meeting back to our chairman.
Thank you, brothers, very much. So many good points to take away from Ezekiel's temple vision, both in a practical way as well as how it affects our worship as well. Thank you, brothers, for covering that information for us. So, brothers and sisters, you might recall the song that we sang at the beginning of our meeting was entitled Move Ahead. And wouldn't you agree that this meeting has really helped us to do just that, to think about ways in which we can move ahead? For example, moving ahead means taking decisive action like the nation of Israel when they were crossing the Jordan River into the Promised Land. Moving ahead means taking on our role as preachers and teachers and having confidence in the tools that the faithful and discreet slave provides for our use in preaching the good news. Moving ahead means peering into the deeper things of God and seeing Jehovah's great spiritual temple and what it can teach us about proper worship, as we just learned in our congregation Bible study. So there were so many excellent things that we took away from our meeting today. Now, what about next week? Well, we have, again, many things to look forward to. We continue our Bible reading in the book of Joshua. From our treasures from God's word, we'll be looking for the theme, turn away from worthless things. How important that we do that. And from our Living as Christians portion, we'll be talking about our organizational accomplishments. We'll be watching a video, as well as the theme, willful disobedience brings bad results. So many things that we look forward to for next week's meeting. But we want to thank you very much for your participation, as well as your watching our program for today. And now we want to conclude with a song and prayer. And the song that's been chosen for our concluding song is number 24, Come to Jehovah's Mountain.